Okay, just want to let everybody know that I am recording this now. It's 7 o'clock, and we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to make sure I'm respectful of everybody's time, so make sure we're going to keep this capped at just an hour. Um, it's an interesting topic because a lot of questions can definitely come up from this. So I will do my best to answer any questions that you may have. But let me kind of start running. We'll go ahead and get this kicked off, and we will hopefully get a lot accomplished here tonight. So first off, I'll quickly just introduce myself. My name is Andrew Connell. I'm the head operator, timing operator slash, what we call the computer person for the Durban Crossing Dolphins. And I've also this year kind of taken over that role as well that Linda ran in previous years for the entire league. So this is the second year that I've done it, been solo running it for our team. Last year, I also ran champs for the league and giving Linda a chance to step away, and I'm kind of taking over that stuff. So the way that what we're going to try and do tonight, I've never done one of these trainings that Linda has run in the past. The schedule never worked out for me, was never able to join, so I really don't know what everybody expects or even what I expect from this. So I'm going to do my best with this, if you have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and post them in the chat, and we'll definitely get to them. Also in the chat, if you scroll back, I'll also put this at the very end as well, just to recap. If you have any questions going forward beyond this webinar, please feel free to send me an email. My email is posted in the chat for you to use as well in the future. I am, in meetings constantly throughout, and I teach technical classes, and so I'm not really available via the phone much. And email is the best way to get a hold of me and get responses. I don't think that I'm going to cover every single thing tonight that you guys are going to want to see or that you may end up running into, but I've covered everything that in my notes here that I've prepared. I'm ready to cover everything that I know that I ran into last year and stuff that I think that everyone's going to end up needing to know. So I'm going to run through in just a minute what we're going to cover, and also as well what we're not going to cover. I'm going to follow the guidance that was decided at the swim league board meeting on what I would and would not cover. But if you have anything, like I said, beyond that, please feel free to post a question in the chat. We'll see if we can answer it, and so forth. So what's on our agenda tonight? We're going to cover three main sections, and this is targeted to the people who are in charge of really running the computers for the meet. So I call that the meet operator, or the person that executes the meet, as well as the person that's in charge of dealing with the timing as well. There's a bunch of logistic stuff that we're not going to cover about running a meet. This is just strictly on the computer side of this whole thing, and keep the scope down to about an hour. So I'm going to cover things that you're going to do pre-meet tasks. That's going to be things that you're going to do the week of the meet, and then stuff during the day of the meet. So meet tasks that you would do both before the meet starts, things you're going to run into during the meet, and post-meet stuff as well. Now, I have some sample meets that from our team that we ran last year. Some of it's going to be like some mocked up stuff, so you'll see that the data looks kind of weird, or that some stuff looks missing, and it's just because I've taken some snapshots from stuff from last year in order to make this work. Now, what are we not covering tonight? We are only going to be covering just Meet Manager and the timing, working with the timing stuff within Meet Manager. What we're not going to cover is team management stuff. So that would include apps like Team Manager, which we used last year at Durban, and I know many of you did as well. We're also not covering Swimtopia, which is the new site that I know that a lot of the teams are using to manage their teams. To be quite honest, it's new to us as well, but the company that we're working with that built Swimtopia, that we have a subscription to, they get a pretty good knowledge base, very helpful in terms of support. So I'm learning with you, and if you have something that that you're having trouble figuring out, we may have figured it out. That's what the email is for. So please feel free to use that. Another thing that we're not going to be covering because it's really covered inside those team management things are creating entries. That's generally something that we see is done by the coach or the coaches or the president who's entering all the swimmers into the relays and the individual entries. That's not something we're going to cover. We're not going to cover the rules and all that stuff. That's not. I don't see that as the responsibility in the computing on the computer side. We're also not going to be covering the timing systems because we're all using different timing systems. I have experience with SST. That's what we use at Durban. I've never worked with the Dolphin system or the Colorado system. I know that there are some teams in the league that are using the Dolphin system. I'm just not familiar with it hands-on. I know how it works. Generally, it works the same way as SST, but the configuration and stuff like that, I've never worked with it, so there's really not much I have to offer there. Okay, but I'd be interested to. Definitely, if you're using it, you're having trouble with it, I'd like to get hands-on with it to kind of learn it a little bit better. Okay, so let's talk a little bit on the logistics stuff. So I'm recording this webinar, as I mentioned earlier. It will be made available on the league website. If you just go to the league website and then under the section Meet Resources and User Guides, we will have a section on there where we'll have essentially like a little knowledge base where we'll have a link to this video, which I'll post to YouTube, as well as any other videos that we end up doing. My goal as taking over for Linda is to have a ton of manuals or a bunch of documentation. It's what I do for a living, is write technical stuff and teach it. So what I want to do is I want to be able to have more of a knowledge base to where it wasn't, where I know that when I came into it, I was really frustrated because I felt like I always needed somebody to show me what was going on. And I felt like if we had some videos, instead of having to call somebody and have them walk me through it on their cell phone, this would have been a heck of a lot easier. So my goal is for us to get to that point. When I ask you if you've got questions, if there's something that you haven't figured out, or something you don't know how to do, like how do I enter a DQ during a meet, or how do I get times, or how do I do a relay adjustment or score the event, those kinds of things. I mean, we can do quick little 2-minute videos that I've collected, and I can post those to YouTube as well, and we can link to them from the league website for you to get those in the future, make things a whole lot easier. My goal is that we don't run this training thing next year. We end up just having an email that goes out and says, here's all the information you need, and we'll hold like a Q&A thing if we need to. As far as the questions go, I'm not seeing the Q&A panel in Zoom for some reason tonight as the presenter. Usually I do, but I'm not seeing it right now. So if I can't get access to it, so if just post your questions to the chat inside of Zoom tonight. Okay, so let's talk about stuff that you're going to end up doing before I start running through the demo. This is mostly going to be demo. It's not going to be many slides. What things do you do before the meet? What things are you going to do like the week before the meet? And so there are a handful of different things that you're going to do in the days leading up to the meet. So I'm talking about stuff that you would do anywhere from Monday all the way up to Friday, not Saturday, the day of the meet. So, So one thing you need to do is you need to make sure that I would definitely recommend you are familiar with the rules. There were a couple things that I learned last year that I was a little surprised at that I didn't realize were things that I either was not allowed to do or that I had to do based on the different rules that were out there. So really go jump on the website and go look at the supplements. The only supplements that are out there right now, as of tonight, April 26th, are the ones from 2017. The 2018 ones have not been approved or ratified by the board. So there may be some changes when those go up there. But there were 4 things that stood out to me as the person who's going to be running the computers during the meet. So first thing, and I have the actual bullets or the points inside the supplements listed here as well. So the first one is H, the home team. The host team must receive entries and rosters. That's 2 different files that you'll get from the visiting team by 6 p.m. 3 days prior to the meet. So we generally do meets on Saturday. You should have those files in your hand by 6 p.m. on Wednesday night or before that. What we would do is that we would then schedule, I would schedule my time usually for Wednesday night to sit down after dinner, and I would create the meet. I would import the rosters and the entries, which we'll see in just a minute, from both my team and from the visiting team. Would then go in and make any of the necessary adjustments, then seed it and create the heat sheets and send those out on Wednesday night. That would allow then the visiting team and our president to then send heat sheets out to everybody that needs them on Thursday or Friday, whatever worked for them. The goal is that the sooner you get that information to your teams or your parents, they can find an issue earlier rather than later, and then hopefully you will be getting all the changes that need to happen to the meet by Friday, so that you can do those on Friday night, and you're not frantically trying to enter stuff in while you have the people who are running the meet standing over your shoulder 15 minutes before they're supposed to do the first event. It's frustrating. So the sooner you can get the changes, the better it is. Another thing that you're going to be doing is that you definitely want to check after you have created the heat sheets. You definitely want to run a report and make sure that each person swimming is swimming no more than the maximum allowed number of events. If they are, the supplements have rules on what you're supposed to do. So if someone tried to register one swimmer for 5 individual events, then the way the supplements are written is that you take the first 3 and they can swim 2 more events, but events 4 and events 5 they're going to be marked as exhibition. They won't count in terms of the scoring. Also, another thing that's really important, and we'll talk about this also when I do one of the demos, but once the meet has been combined, or we call it once the meet has been seeded, which means that I've imported all of the rosters and I've imported all the events, all the entries, and we've made sure that everything is set the way we want to set it. When you go and seed the meet, what that does is that effectively creates all of the heats and puts all the swimmers in the correct heat. So faster heats are faster kids are put with faster kids. Kids that are not as fast are put with people of the same speed, so that they don't have a crazy heat where 2 people are so much faster than everybody else. Once that's been seeded, you cannot make any changes to the meet in terms of creating new heats. That is not allowed by the rules. Also, any swimmers that are added after you've seeded the meet are not allowed to be scored either. That's all. Each team does you don't get to see the everybody that's being entered in and then go change and add some additional swimmers in. That's part of the rules. And then additionally, that families or teams are allowed to make changes up to 15 minutes prior to the meet. So by people who are that are in the meet, that are already in the meet, and if they are have an event where things are getting moved around based on what the rules allow, or you're swapping somebody in or out in a relay if people are sick or something like that, then you're moving times around, then all those changes can happen, and I'll show you how to do that in the demos in just a minute. But they have up until 15 minutes prior to the meet. You really want to try and get all that information in though as early as you possibly can, because you're going to have new heat sheets to print and all that stuff, and you don't want to try and do that in 15 minutes. At Durban, we do that. We try and make that cutoff at about 30 minutes, but we do the best we can there. All right, so let's dive into a demo and let's see how all this stuff works. So pre-meet tasks. So let me switch back to, there we go, let's get out of that. Oh. Just one second, screen sharing to my desktop. Okay, so if controls, that's not what I'm looking for. Where'd my chat go? There. Somebody let me know in the chat, make sure that you can see my screen. You can see Meet Manager is up. Yes, okay, cool. So I have to hide the chat a little bit, so I can't do this on 2 screens. Okay, so here's what I've got set up. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open up an existing, let's say you're starting a new meet. So I'm starting on, say, Wednesday night, and I've received the meet files from the visiting team and the home team. So they're going to, from whatever app they're using, like Team Manager or Swimtopia or whatever else it is, they're going to export a roster file and they're going to export all the entries. And so what I have is, I believe it's here. Yeah. So what I have, let me show you what I have here. This is, I'm just doing this for one team. So I'm going to, make it up that this is a mock meet. What I've done is I've downloaded the template from the league website that pertains to this meet. So we have A meets and B meets, or A weeks and B weeks. Let's just say that this is a B week, and let's just say that I have an 8-lane pool and I'm hosting here at Durban. So I downloaded that template from the league website, and what I'll do is I'm going to come over, I'm going to rename this to DCD Bartram. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to open that file up. All right, so I've got the database open. So the first step I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set this meet up. So I'm going to come over here and go to setup and go to meet setup. And based on the template, you're going to see some old data that's there. So I'm going to go ahead and change this up here. So the meet name is Durban Crossing Dolphins, or we're hosting it. So it's going to be Bartram at Durban Crossing. And Heritage, where is this going to be? Durban Crossing South Amenity Center. And then I'm going to choose all the other information here that I want to change, that I want to set here for the address and all that other stuff that you'd want to set. So 32259. Now, let's go in and let's change some of the dates here. This event, actually happened last year, and it's going to make it makes a difference based on the entries I'm going to import. So I want these dates to be correct. So here we're going to say this meet actually happened on June 17th of last year. So I'll pick June 17th, 2017. The end date was the same day, 17. Age up. So this is always going to be June 1st of the current year. The entry deadline, we'll just make that a few days prior. So that'll be, say, the 14th. Or sorry, entry open date, let's just make that the 13th. And then the entry deadline date, we'll make that the 15th, just for the heck of it. All right. Now, a couple of things you have to set here. So over here on the ID format, that is going to be USA Swimming. The class is age group. The meet type is standard. The style is standard. And the course is yards. Good thing here is that most of all the stuff is all set for you. You're not going to have to worry about this. Everything is all done for you. Also here, DQ codes, we're using custom DQ codes. So I'll take that. I'll go ahead and just click OK. And it's going to tell me a couple of things. I'm just going to click through it. Now the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to come over here and I want to go to the scoring preferences. Now the reason I'm going to mention this is because there were some changes from last year to this year. You know, make sure you have this set correctly. So here, under the entries the entries and entry limits, you want to set it to these values you see down here. So you want to say maximum entries per athlete, including relays, is 4. Maximum individual entries per athlete is 3. The minimum maximum relay entries per athlete is 2. So they could be in 2 individual events and 2 relays, or 3 individual events and 1 relay, but max events is 4. Anything above that has to be done as an exhibition. Let's see, so one of the entry limits are exceeded, that's correct. And then I'm gonna come over here to scoring. So this is the thing that actually changed from last year to this year. This is, oh, I lost my notes on this, darn it. So this is gonna be spelled out in the supplements. I believe this one was that this should be 4 and 1, but double check on the league. Okay, just checking the chat. Double check on the supplements to make sure that you have that correct. In fact, if you give me a half second, I can actually find that because I did write that down, and now of course I don't have it here. Yes, so it actually should be this, my bad. Individuals is 3 and relay is 1. So these are the values you should have. All right, I'll go ahead and click OK. And then, actually, I think let's double check one more thing. I think it was on entry and scoring preferences, scoring and awards. And this is supposed to be the high-tech age group points as well. That's the other thing that was supposed to be selected. Okay, save all those changes. Our meet's in good shape. So the first step is going to be to import your rosters. So from here, you'll say File, Import Rosters Only. So I will pick my roster file that I got from my team, and you'd get a pair of these from the visiting team as well. So I take this, say open that up. You can read through this. It says, hey, basically what it's going to do is it's a zip file that's sent to you. So it's going to open it up into a special folder, and then it's going to show you the file. So you want this HY3 file. It's the only one that'll show up. And then I'm going to say, go ahead and import this. It's going to say, do you want to copy things? I'm just going to say yes, go and pull it in, use LSC, yes. And it pulled in 178 athletes on our team. Okay, so we're in good shape there. You can always double check by clicking on athletes. And ta-da, I've got all these athletes that are showing up. So I'm in good shape there. Next step is going to be to import all of the entries. So I say File, Import Entries. And I'll go back, say Desktop, and I'll pick the entries. Now, when I did this export, this was a mistake because it's only going to pull in relays, if I'm not mistaken. So match event numbers, no time, enforce, import relay entries. No, we don't want that. Let's do all of them. Do not import. So we imported all those in now. There were exceptions. Exception port was reported, and this is going to tell us if there are any issues. So I'm going to ignore this for right now. All right. This is because of a data, just a data entry thing. I'm just showing you the process of importing these things. So now what I've done is I'm now in pretty good shape for going through. I've created I've imported both rosters and both entries from both teams. The next thing that you're going to want to end up doing is you want to end up seeding the meet. So from here, once I've done that, you may want to go through and look at a bunch of other things like making sure that you've got, well, actually, no, you want to do this. You want to do seeding next. So you'll pick seeding. And then what I'll end up doing is I'm going to select all of these events. And you see I have all these entries that are listed in here, which is good. And I have no heats associated with them. And that's what this seeding process is going to do. So I'll click Select All, which checks off every single item. And then I'll say Start Seeding. So this is going to tear through and create 59 events. So now my meet has been seeded. There's no changes that I can make to it in terms of adding swimmers at this point. Now, once that's done, one thing that we like to do is to get an idea on timing and how long that things are going to end up taking. So what I do next is if I come over to let's see, I think it's under Events, and I go to Sessions, I can create a session for this event. So if you're not sure what this is, you'll see in just a second, it'll make sense. Saturday, day 1, the meet's going to start at 8 a.m. 08:00 a.m. The interval is how much time is between heats. 15 seconds is generally a good number. If you take a little bit longer, you can take a little bit longer. You can modify this. Adds an extra backstroke time interval, 15 seconds. That's about fair, which you leave there. Diving time per dive, we don't care about that because we don't do that in the St. John Summer Swim League. The course is always in yards. And then all these other ones, we just leave these kind of blanked out. So I'll say, okay, we'll close this. And then I will click the Move All, which will take all of these events and we'll move them into the selected session. Now, what that does for me is that if I then come over, close out of these two, and I go to Reports, Sessions, and I select this session and say create a report, what this will do for me is give me an idea on where I should be when we're running the meet. So if I come over here to the very end, it says that my meet should be over at 10 o'clock, right? 10 a.m. But this is a good thing to be able to check and see where things are going. As just a personal footnote, do not share this file or this report with many people, because parents do not like it when they start to notice that you're getting behind, or the other team starts to find out when you're getting behind. This is something that we keep ourselves and we give to our starter, and we can just get a feel for, are we on track? Are we running late? What's our ballpark being finished? Stuff like that. So this is definitely something. This is data you can even put inside your heat sheets if you wanted to. I don't recommend it. Been at those events. All right, from here, you've now got everything all set up. You now need to go give the stuff that is that you need to give to your to the other team. Okay, so what you would end up doing here, you need to create two files. You're going to need to create the heat sheets, and you're going to need to create the data file, or you need to actually just need to create the heat sheets. So I'm going to come over here to reports, and I'm going to say meet program, and I'm going to say select all, pick all the events, and then I'm going to go through and create my heat sheet. You got a lot of options how you want to end up doing this. Do you want to do a double column? You want to do triple column? Do you want to include in the meet program? You can put things like times. You can put the heat start times. That's the thing that I was just talking about. If you did this, sorry, if you did heat start times, that's where the session that we just created, it would include what time that heat should start. Again, you're going to have some pretty frustrated parents if a child has missed their heat because things are moving at a different clip. So that's just that's up to you guys on if you want to do that. We don't give that information out to the families just because things can just be dynamic. Yep, so you create all that, go through and create a report. Here's my heat sheet. You can see a couple pages here for relays. Here are some individual events going on. So everything's in pretty good shape with this. After you get to this point, you have the ability to then go in and start combining events, right? You can look at this and say, do I want to combine things? You may want to make adjustments to this. Like, for example, if I'm looking at, let's see, girls and boys swimming together isn't always the best, but let's say just for the sake of argument, that I have one girl here swimming all by herself, and then I've got these two boys events where I've got these two boys and these three boys swimming together. I can go through and combine these events together. And what I would end up doing when I do that is that I need to go in and modify event 17 in this case, because I need to move Taryn to a different lane that is not occupied over here. So the way I would do that is if I come over to the run menu and I find 17 where she was, I'm going to click the adjust menu. And here, if I remember correctly, it was 4, 5, and 6 of the lanes that were occupied. I'm just going to move her. Let's say I move her to lane 2. And when I do that, save my change, she's now in lane 2. And if I go rerun that heat sheet or the meet program to generate the heat sheets, and say select all, create report. Jump to the next page. There it is. She's now in lane 2. And so now we've got, there's lanes 2, 4, 5, and 6 are now together. And then I know that I'm going to end up combining these two events. Okay. So it's just a technique. You don't have to do that, but it just helps kind of pick up the pace of the event. And plus wouldn't feel as awkward then if she's all swimming by herself. Boys and girls swimming together, you as a team figure out if that's legit, if you're okay with doing that. Maybe you decide that you want to put have a lane, separating boys and girls, which we have the ability to do here because we could have put her in lane 1 and put the boys in 3, 4, 5 and have lane 2 empty. Okay. We could have even combined all 3 of these together and put all these boys and girls together if we wanted to, but just showing you how to do it, you need to decide if that's what you want to do. Okay. All right, so now we've got our we got our heat sheets all done. I would then take this heat sheet, well, the one I just had, there's a way to save it, and then that's when I end up emailing over to my visiting team. Now, so we've gotten past that. Let me jump back over to my slides real quick. So the next thing that we're doing is now we have things that we want to do on the day of the meet. So we're going to want to, configure our timing system. Meet's going to start up, things we're going to do during the meet, and then how we can handle some incidents. Now, one thing I want to mention here on the configuring the timing system in Meet Manager, I've talked to a couple different teams, and I know that there's a few new people who are being the operator for their teams, for the computer stuff on their teams. Let me just give you one bit of unsolicited feedback. I would really encourage you to not use one computer to do timing and run Meet Manager during the meet. You really want to have two machines. Having two machines is a little more complicated in the sense of having to get them to talk to each other on the day of the meet. Something you can definitely practice getting set up ahead of time. There's lots of options for doing that, but I would strongly advise to not try and do this in one computer, because you're going to be running, the timing system has to be up and running all the time, and you'll have things you want to do in Meet Manager to make changes. Someone missed a meet and all that stuff going on, and you've just got to stop the meet while that's going. When that happens, it's not a good scene, at least in my opinion. If you can do it and you've done it before, I mean, go for it, but I'm just giving you my 2 cents. Okay, so let's run through these different things and see how to go about doing this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over to Meet Manager, and I'm going to open up an existing meet that we had created last year that has already been seeded. It's got a lot more, it's much more realistic because it has 2 teams in it, and we're good to go. So first of all, what happens before the meet starts? Well, there's really 2 different things that are going to happen. You're either going to have an athlete scratch, so someone's going to be sick and not show up, or you're going to have to do relay adjustments. I find the easiest way to scratch swimmers is to go to the athlete screen that you saw I clicked on the last one. So that's just inside Meet Manager. There's athletes right here. So I'd click on athletes. I would then find the athlete that is the one that is not going to show up today. I will pick my son, for example. So I pick my son, and I will say he's not going to make these events. So I'm going to scratch him by just selecting the events he's in, which are the check boxes, and I would simply go to the SCR to say I'm scratching him, I'm scratching him, and I'm scratching him. He can no longer swim those events. If you need to mark them as exhibition for some reason, because a coach has told you that, then you would go over here and you'd actually mark them as exhibition like this. And that way they can swim and they'll get times, but they won't count towards the points. Now, the other thing you may run into is that I need relay adjustments. So the easiest way to do relays is to go to the run menu, where you're basically going to run the entire meet. But the way you're going to do the relays, let's say you're going to swap out one swimmer for another one, or you're going to change the order of something, which teams are allowed to do. So I'm going to come over here to the boys 10 and under, and what I'm going to do is go to the relays button here in the top. There was a menu at the top option, so just in case you missed that. So I'm going to go to relays up here at the top. And I'm going to pick the relay I want to change. So boys 10 and under. Let's say, for example, Nate Albers is going to swim the anchor leg, and Cooper Gillum is going to be pulled out for Jackson Dahl. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to double click on Cooper Gillum to pull him out. I can take Nathaniel Albers and move him down. You can see a little arrow, a little swordfish is there. And then I just take Jackson Dahl, and I can either drag him in like this, or I can double click on him and it'll put him in that gap spot that you see there. Okay. So what I had done, I picked the event. I then picked the relay entry. So there's an A entry, a B, 2 A entries that are in here, and then I can then go through and show you how I move people around. okay? So that was how we make relay adjustments. Now, once that's done, now we're ready for the meet to start. Meet's off and running. So the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to end up doing, you're going to want to make sure, and this is something you're really going to want to do way before the meet starts, is to configure your timing systems if you're not just using stopwatches. So the way you do that is that, like I said, both computers, the one that's running the timing and the one that's running your meet manager, so the one we're looking at here, they need to be able to, well, they keep telling you they need to talk to each other. If you're technically oriented, basically what they're going to do is the timing system is going to write out these data files, and your meet manager computer needs to be able to read those data files. So what we do at Durbin is we create a file share on the timing computer, and we create a map drive from the meet manager machine that maps over to that file share that's on the timing computer. The reason why the timing computer maintains all timing, because if the connection goes down, the timing system can continue to go and the meet can continue to run and be executed while we're trying to figure out the connection issue between the two computers. When entering times does not have to happen while the meet's going on inside a meet manager. That can be done after the meet, but it's easier to stay on top of it while it's going on, and it's totally feasible to do it. So how does that work? Well, I'm going to come over here to interfaces, and I'm going to go to setup first and choose the timing console interface. Here, because we use SST, I'm going to pick the first one, generic network file sharing, or GNet, because we're using SST. If you're using a Dolphin, it would tell you to do something different. If you're using a Colorado, it would tell you to do something different. So it's whatever system you're using, you're going to choose that here inside this option. Then you're going to come over here to interfaces and set up the timer GNet, or the generic network for me, or you're going to pick whatever your timer is that you've just set up a second ago. And I'm going to select the data set that's stored from GNet. So here, I'm first going to go update the data location and tell it where are those files. So I would pick the map drive that I had mapped to. In my case, they're on the desktop. So I keep all the timing files. I create a folder for every meet, and then I put all the timing files. Once the meet's over, I copy them from the timing computer back over to where I have a backup of everything. So this was my backup from last June. So I'll select that folder and click open. I'll click update the data set, and you see here I'm on meet 2. There's no date. Well, let's go check and see. Click next meet. There we go. It's June. This meet is from June the 3rd, 2017. 128 races, and the start time was at 8:05. So this is not something you're really going to be able to do unless you do like a test run before the meet starts. You're going to need one thing to run to test it. So I'll click close, and now we're all set up. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go through and pull times in. So this one's already been, this relay is already finished. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say get times. So what that does is that is using, after I've done all the stuff to set up my timing system, which includes creating a scoreboard file and a whole bunch of other stuff that is specific to your timing system, so refer to the manual for that. I'm going to click get times, and you see it pulled times in just fine. And in this case here, none of these are really alarming because you see they're all white. If you saw two numbers that were showing up as red, then what that says is between the, like in the, for both Dolphins and for SST, where you have you have two timers and each one's got a little plunger or it's got a little device. If they push their buttons 0.3 of a second slower than each other or faster, either way, which there's a variance of 0.3 of a second, then this will highlight and say something isn't right. Right, the times are not exactly right. 0.3 is the measure for human reaction. So in that case, you need to look at that time and say, I'm not so sure if I trust that time, or you don't know which one was the correct one. So what I end up doing is that you don't score it right now. You're going to wait. You're going to wait until you get the handwritten timing sheets from the people who are writing down the stopwatch times. Look at the stopwatch times and compare those to these two buttons that you have. What you generally want to do, or the rule that I was always taught, was you accept the plunger times, the times from the timing system over the stopwatch times, unless you have a reason not to. So if I'm looking at this, and let's just say, for example, that this was a 2:02 and this was like a 2:07. So there's a 5-second difference. If I look at the timing sheets that came back to me and they show a number that's closer to 2:02, then now I've got a pretty good indication that that 2:07 number that I said that somebody entered for backup 2, that they just clicked their button way too slow. So what I would do is I would take that number, select it, and delete it like that, and then say calculate to recalculate that time so that they actually get a finals time of 2:02 instead of the average of 2:02 and 2:07, because you're going to get an average of these two times. Okay? So that's one thing we would end up doing. Another thing you're going to end up needing to do is you're going to need to enter in DQs. So you'll have your stroke and turn judges will identify swimmers that have done something that disqualifies them. You're going to get these sheets. The sheets first have to go, I think they go to the HMO, the head meet official, and then from there they go to the coaches who have a chance to contest it. But if the coaches agree with it, these DQ slips will come back to you. Once you get them, you then are going to look at the DQ slips, and you'll have the event, the heat, and the athlete. And so for here, let me just grab an individual first. So let's say that Kaylin here DQ. So what you end up doing is you come over here and you say she's a DQ, and then you enter in the code. And on the sheets that you get, it actually has a number and a letter code in there that you'll choose from. So you'll just pick from this, like that value right there. And that they do that so that the coaches can go back to the athletes and explain to them what happened, why it was, and work with them to improve. If it's a relay, like up here, then when you pick the DQ and then you go to the DQ code, you first have to make sure you pick which one of the swimmers it was. So in this case here, stroke infraction, number 1 relay, swimmer 1 relay, or it was early takeoff, number 2. The swimmer 1 didn't have an early takeoff because they went on the buzzer. So that's how you'd end up picking those things as well. And I think that is, and there's one more thing. So once you've gone through and you've done your DQs and you validated all those weird times, that if there are red times, you validate all those red times, you then are going to want to score your event. So then I just go click, you can click on score, but it's going to generate a PDF every time. So I just click rescore, and now it shows that this event is scored, and it shows the total score for the team. When you went through the setup of the meet, you have an option to use Meet Bubble and to configure that. If you are connected to the internet on your Meet Manager machine, when you score the event, it will send that to Meet Mobile, and parents who are using Meet Mobile on their phones will get an update for that event. So just keep that in mind. When you hit score, that's when that's going to happen. So if you ever are at a meet and your kid's swimming at maybe swims at like one of the year-round club teams, if when you go to a meet and then later on that night you get a series of a bunch of updates that all happen that evening, that's because they decided not to score it during the meet. They scored it after the meet. They just waited. They just collected all the data during the meet, and then someone's sitting there and rescoring everything all at once. Okay, so now the last thing I want to cover here is what happens on different incidents that happen. There's 2 incidents, or there's one incident that happens quite frequently, at least with summer swim leagues. And I'm going to show it to you here. There's something you need to do also when the meet's done, but I'm going to show it to you here because this was tricky for me, and it would help you to know this one. So let's say, for example, and I have to kind of do hand waving here, and you're just going to have to follow along what I'm doing with this to understand what's going on. Because I can't exactly do it without, it's hard to replicate this when a meet is not going on. But let's say, for example, I'll just pick one at random, so I don't want to pick on anybody specific. So I'll just pick, actually, you know what? It's easier if I actually pick on my own kids, so I can't get in trouble. Let me find my daughter. So she is in event 21. So not athletes. So let's come over here to event 21, and this to update. So these are the heat. So that's heat 1, heat 2. Nope, she's not there. Heat 3. Nope, heat 4. There we go. So there's my daughter. Actually, this is gonna be a bad example. Let's just, yeah, let's do this one. Okay, I'll do this one first. Let's say, for example, that the swimmer in lane 3 missed their heat. They, for some reason, they were not there, and they show up right afterwards, or they show up in a couple minutes or whatever. So when you import times, they're going to show up with no time. It'll say NS for no time. I don't know why there's an S, but no start. So what you can do is we can have this athlete, Josephine, we can have her swim in another event and pull, or another heat, another event somewhere, and we can pull her time into into the one that she missed. So just because she missed it doesn't mean she's all out of luck. It means we just have to find another way of getting her time in. So here's how we're going to go about doing this. What you want to do is first identify where we can put her. So let's just say, for example, I'm going to put her with the girls over here, and I can see that in heat 1, there we've got 3 open lanes down here in event 23. So we were just in event 21. I'm going to identify in 23. That is where we can go. So I'm going to communicate to my starter. I'm going to communicate to the little girl, maybe even to the parents, to the coaches. I'm going to make sure they know, hey, look, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put her in lane 5 in event 23, heat 1. So that's all been communicated. I'm going to write that down off to the side. Now, when the timing is going on, when all that timing stuff is going on, every time there's the person that's running your timing system has a heat sheet, and they should be writing down the race number for the heat and the event that's run. So this one right here, event 1, that was going to be race number 1. We have 1 heat on this one, so heat number 2. So coming down here, so all the way down to event number 10, you can see we have 1 heat going on each one of these. So I know that event 9, heat 1 is going to be race number 9. Event 9, heat number 2 is going to be race number 10. So I've written down a piece of paper. I have a piece of paper written down next to me, and I know where those things are. So she missed her heat. We've put her in event 23, heat 1. So I don't know, I'm not going to count all these up right now, but let's just say hypothetically that was race number 49, okay? And I know that because my timing person was writing those numbers down while the things are going, while the meet's going on. So once that's now happened, I need to go back and get her time. And so the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to come over here into the adjust menu. And what I'm going to do is, remember we swam her in heat number, or lane number 5. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a heat. Now, earlier I said you could not add heats after you seeded the meet. And that's true. You can't do that when you want to add a swimmer to an event. We're not doing that. What we're doing is we're adding a heat strictly to get around the fact that she missed her event. So we're simply adding a heat to capture her data from another event, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take Josephine, who missed her event, and I'm gonna grab her, left click her, I'm gonna move her all the way down here to lane 5. And I'll save my changes. So now she's out of this one. When I come back over here to event number 5, here she is. So the meet's already gone past, event 23. I'm going to come over here to the race button, and I'm going to say she was in the race number 50. That's the data file that the timing system created. And then I'm going to say, and it's going to say, hey, this doesn't match up. And I just say accept, because now with 50, it knows that it got a whole bunch of other times, but because there's only one person listed, it's only going to pull in the time from lane number 5 for that one. So now she still shows as officially swimming in in event 21, and she now has a time. So effectively, we just rewrote history, but she still swam the way she was supposed to. We just ended up putting her at a different time. Okay. The only thing to keep in mind with that is keep in mind with the ages and the genders. We don't want like a 9-year-old girl swimming with the 15 and up boys, right? So just keep that in mind. Where you're going to put her, it may take a second. It's going to be easier to look at a heat sheet to figure out where you have a gap and where you can put somebody. Okay, but that's why you can get around a common issue that's going to pop up. Same thing is true with relays. It works the exact same way. Okay, you would end up going to the adjust screen. So if I come over here to these boys relays, hit adjust, we swam them somewhere else. So I would say add a heat. Our boys, you went from 4, we're going to move you into lane 4 over here, and you swam in some other relay where there was an open lane. Okay, you just can't create a new heat in that other event to get them in there. There has to be a place for them to swim. If they missed it and there's no place for them to swim, there's nothing you can do. All right, let me just check and see if I have any questions. Nope, everybody's just sitting back listening. Cool. All right, let's say our entire meet has now been updated. Oh, one other thing, this tripped me up. Let's say you come back and you need to like change a number or something, like rescore it. You need to go back through and rescore each one of these coming all the way back down through. So if I made a change here on lane 4 on event 14 after I had scored it, then I would need to go back and rescore all the way down from 14 all the way through down to 70. That's one of the reasons why people don't like using Meet Mobile, is because the results that show up on Meet Mobile are technically not official. But if you're publishing these things out during the meet, you could have parents come back, 2 days later and say, yeah, but my kid said that he got this time and Meet Mobile showed this time, and now you're telling me when I get the results, it was something else. It's like, well, all that other stuff you said before wasn't official. We were just trying to help you out and give you some information. So it's up to you. Let's see. So let's say now the meet's completely finished. Everything's finished. We're good to go. Now what do we do? What's the very last thing that we're going to end up doing? Did I just have? Nope, everything's still there. Okay. So the last thing you need to do, once the meet is over, everyone's gone home, everything has been scored, you think the meet is finished. So what you end up doing next is you have to provide both the final results and the data file to the visiting team. So you need to do that same afternoon after the meet concludes. So we usually go home and do it. There's 2 things you do. First, you go to reports. So I'm going to say reports, results. So actually, let me open up the completed meet. And let me go results. So everything has been done. You see all these events are all scored. So I'm going to select all. I'm going to create a report. You can choose to have the final score and all that stuff in there as well if you want. That was some of the options at the bottom. So here's all the results. I will take that. Here's my little save button over here. So I'll say export. I will put that somewhere on my computer. And then I will also come over here to the file menu and say file, export, results for Swim Manager or SWIMS or NCAA or USMS. All right. So I'm going to export these. I will pick the team. So in this case here, I'm Durban, so I'm going to send this one to Heritage Landing. I'm only exporting their data. Usually all the defaults are fine, and it looks like they are. I'll say OK. It generates the report. I say, where do I want to save it? And I'm going to take that file that I'm going to end up saving right here and the PDF that I just generated for the results that I had a second ago, and we send both of those to the other team. The other team has until meet tasks, meet all that stuff, down here. So these are called the preliminary meet results. So we're going to take those 2 data files, provide them to the visiting team, and the visiting team has until 6 p.m. the following day, so 6 o'clock Sunday, to challenge the meet before it's final. If 6 o'clock rolls around and you don't get an email from the other team saying that, hey, this time is wrong or this time is wrong, then you go back in. If you don't have any changes, you can use the files you created previously. But if you get a report that there's an issue, then you need to go resolve the issue. So that's usually someone says, I had a time that was this. I need to get I had a time that was like say a minute, 5 seconds, but the heat sheets or the result sheet is showing that I did it in a minute, 9 seconds. That's not correct. So what you end up doing is we usually go to the timing sheets and we go look them up and make sure, okay, let's see, did something get imported incorrectly or what? Those timing sheets that the stopwatch people are writing down are your last resort. So that's why you never want to lose those. In fact, I think I still have a box under my desk from all the ones from last year. I don't need them anymore. I can clean that out, but it's just, we still have them, and we keep them usually for a few weeks just in case, or through the season. Okay. If you end up having to make a change, which you go back to your president, your coach, and figure out, what needs to be done, then you then have to re-export the reports and the data file to give back to the other team. And you're going to need that for your stuff as well, because you're going to need to take that data file, and that's what you're going to import into your team management stuff, whether that be Swimtopia or whether that be Team Manager. Let's see. I think that is everything that I wanted to show you. Yep, I think so. So I don't see any questions here. And cool, everybody is still here. All right, so that's everything that I wanted to cover. If you have any questions, if you can't, just post them to the chat. You can also email me. Let me put my email in there as well. Let me stop sharing for just a second. Actually, instead, yeah, actually, I don't need to share anymore. So here in the group chat. So I just put my email address in the group chat for the webinar. If you have questions, if there was something else that I didn't show you, there are all these different edge cases of things that can come up. And if you think about it, if you've done this in the past, send me an email and I'll see if I can't, give you a little bit of guidance on it. After we take this webinar, my goal is to have a few of the recordings as we start doing this stuff throughout the season, and all these little exceptions, all these little special use cases and stuff that pop up. Things like making adjustments to relays or moving an athlete from one spot to another spot, like I showed you. Entering in disqualifications, how to deal with timing differences, and you have to reconcile them. All of that stuff, I'd love to have little, 30-second to 2-minute videos that we got that are available to us and linked over on the St. John's Summer Swim League website that we can all use as our different resources. But you help me by telling me what stuff was not covered. That's everything I got tonight. Does anybody have any questions, or let me know in the chat, was this useful to you? Is there something that we didn't cover that you wanted to see that maybe we end up doing another one of these to cover stuff that was missed? Like I said, it's the first time I've done one of these trainings, and so I wasn't entirely sure what to show everybody, but my understanding was we're not covering, from what I was told from the board, was we're not covering the team management stuff. We're just covering execution of a meet. And that's what I tried to cover in our outline tonight. So I don't see anybody putting anything in the chat. Oh, there we go. Very useful and no experience at all with high tech. As a software engineer, I can tell you that the Meet Manager software is incredibly frustrating. There are so many options and settings for so much stuff that it is overwhelming. But when you realize that you're probably only going to mess with about 10 to 15% of all of Meet Manager. It's a little bit easier to bite off. So yeah, definitely I would spend some time playing around with it, spend some time, get your coaches or somebody to just take your swimmers and create like some mock data that you can play with. The one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to try and do this the very first time all on your own when you've never, if you've never done this during a meet, because it can be pretty stressful. If you are not a home meet early in the season and you want to come over to Durban, you want to stand behind us and watch us how we end up doing it too, I wish that I had had that opportunity. So you've got my open invitation to be able to do that. Heck, I could even use some helpers. But at any rate, if you want to be able to see it, you're more than welcome to see it. So you can see the stuff that's going on. All right. So for those of you who just left a comment about this was being helpful, thank you very much. It's always fun to do these things. You get no feedback during the session. You can't tell if everyone has kind of left it running and gone off to go do dinner or if they didn't pay attention to it. But I appreciate, I hope it was useful. I appreciate the comments that were there, and hopefully we'll have a great season. So again, use my email if you got any questions. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and we will send an email out with a link to this once it's up. Once I get it, I can download it from Zoom and it's been processed. We will send a link out probably in the next few days where you can get to. So awesome. Thanks a lot, guys.